Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, as everybody knows, almost unanimously, is a perfect and fantastic superhero movie. Animation, the story, the writing, direction, everything is just so tight and well put together. It's very hard to argue for any other movie being more sound and, well, better. It is a clear 10 out of 10 for me, of course. But with the recent release of its sequel, Across the Spider-Verse, the question has been brought up, is it just as good or even better? Or does it just kind of hang around a little lower, like most sequels tend to do? Well, today, I would like to bring my thoughts into this ring and talk about the movie because it was really good. This is my comprehensive thoughts and review for Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. You would have a very tough time arguing to me or to most people saying that the first movie looked better. The first movie is fantastic and changed animation, Western animation specifically, like indefinitely. It was a absolute game changer. And the fact that the sequel did the same thing 5 years later and looks even better, did even more, just shows all that you really need to know. Some specific things I love are just like the attention to detail and the effect usage and how much love you can really see went into this. Like you can taste how much of a passion project this was for everyone involved, especially the animators, of course. Like it's just all over how much passion and love they have for this movie. That really adds a lot as to why the animation is so good. Visually, I don't really know what I can say besides it's perfect. It's just so visually striking, and the visual storytelling and the even like the frame rate storytelling and the effect storytelling, like every single part of this movie visually does so much. And other than visually, there's also auditory, the music. Oh my god, it was so good also. And while I will say out the gate, no song in this movie really hit like What's Up Danger in terms of a needle drop song and like in a scene. Still, the soundtrack is fantastic. Metro Boomin, crazy. The original score by Daniel Pemberton, just insane how he did in fact one-up himself from the first movie. Well, the insert songs and the album surrounding the movie, I think, is about the same as the first one in terms of quality and how good it was. The original scoring is just clear and far above the first one. Like, I don't know how he beat himself, but he did. So, light spoilers. This movie is a cliffhanger, and a lot of people have been saying how it doesn't feel super complete or very like a finished standalone movie because of obviously the nature of the sequel coming out like next year, and it is like a part one basically, as originally it was going to be a part one and part two movie. And I totally see that argument, I really do. But something that got brought to my attention that I think really counteracts this point really well is the fact how they used Gwen in this movie to make it a solid narrative. While Miles' story is very much split between this and the next movie, you can already tell, but they used Gwen as almost like a second main character, like a co-lead. Like, she is fantastic in this movie, and I loved it so much, how much screen time she got. Probably not as much as Miles, I don't think, but like very close, and I think that's wonderful because she's a fantastic character. It helps this movie because her story is very sound and has that beginning and end feeling with her narrating specific parts and the beginning and the end and coming full circle really helps this movie stand alone despite the fact that this is a very clear part one, part two kind of deal. And I think for me personally, that really helps this movie stand on its own. For the fan service, as I think that's also a big talking point, I think personally it was perfect. The way they handled the fan servicey, like gimmicky parts was just phenomenal, because in a movie like this it makes sense to have some, which alone is not a good enough reason, because while I love No Way Home, for example, it was a little gimmicky the way they handled some of it, which I did think detracted from it, of course. But the thing that this movie did so well that I have not seen anybody give its props to is the way that it handled the fan service, the crowd pleasing moments. Where, yes, you get these spider people, these other characters that I won't spoil, that come in and to get a reaction out of the audience, or to get like a, oh, that's awesome because of X, Y, and Z, my childhood, you know. The way they did it so well was by it played enough of a part and it made enough sense with the nature of this movie, but nothing that was directly eye candy affected the plot in any real way. And they handled it so well where it doesn't take up a lot of time or energy, but is still there to see and get that like, ooh, goody goody feeling, and doesn't affect anything long term. Like, if you cut out all the like specific fan servicey bits, you lose max like a minute of the movie. This like 2.5 hour movie, max a minute. And it just kind of it's kind of there to just kind of be like, oh, that's a cool thing, right? And I think that's just phenomenal the way they did that. Or it was just like in the background, just stuff for somebody to see. One of my favorite things about this movie is the way that it contrasts with so many classic Spider-Man stories and kind of reinvents them. A lot of people love like Spider-Man Edge of Time, which I think has a great spin on that same message with like Miguel and Peter. And Miguel in this movie, by the way, fantastic antagonist. Just ooh. And the way that it contrasts with that same lesson he learned in that game about being Spider-Man is about trying to save everybody, not giving up or blah, 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 because can of events or whatever. Which, by the way, Miguel is coping so hard because he was saying like, oh, all spider people get bit by a spider. Boy, you didn't. Who are you? You got genetically vamped, dude. Get out of here. But yeah, I love, as a huge, incredibly large Spider-Man fan myself, I love this contrast with old stories coming in, like notions to Peter and Miguel's history, as they were kind of the first spider people that from different worlds that interacted before Spider-Verse was ever a thing. I think that's awesome. I love the contrast with the comics and how they spun it a little bit. At the end of the day, Spider-Man has about these core values, and I love how they spun it in this movie, especially getting into Miles and how they handled his character. And I love Miles. I loved him in the first one, but this movie really just made me adore him and realize how much of a badass he is. I love the way that them putting the classic Spider-Man spin in his hands about him being the one that's going to try to save everybody also coincides with the plot line of him not being Spider-Man, not being worthy, or he shouldn't have been Spider-Man, which is just fantastic to have Miles get that plot line, as it's almost a meta commentary on him as a character, where because of so many people who, for usually very disgusting reasons, not accepting Miles as Spider-Man because of who he is, as a lot of people in the real world don't see him as Spider-Man, when he's the GOAT, dude. He's awesome. And I think they handled it really well, and he just has so many fantastic character moments where he gets to display how much of a Spider-Man he really is, like how much he really embodies what being Spider-Man is, more so than anybody else in this movie, like more than Peter or Gwen or anybody. Speaking of his character, I'm a bitch for the rejecting of destiny kind of thing. So along with that, I just love how he is just kind of rejecting the whole canon events, or people saying he's not Spider-Man. Like, I love it so much how he's just taking it into his own hands. And I think that's a fantastic message to really get across in this movie and for this character. And I love Miguel and how he is a foil to that, to the Spider-Man that is a little more hardened. Aside from them, I love what they did for Peter. Well, I know some people had some issues with that, but I thought it was really good. It just kind of makes sense. Finally, I love Spot. I love what they did with Spot so much. He's fantastic in this movie. It's really impressive that they handled the two villain kind of thing. Spot was just fantastic. I love his growth throughout the movie's change. And I think in the next movie he's going to be a real menace. And also, Hobie GOAT. Hobie is him. I love Hobie. But finally, I need to, compare to the first movie. Is it better or worse? Because that was my whole point. Honestly, this movie is a 10 out of 10 for me. Still, I loved it. It's fantastic. But I also 10 out of 10 for me are more of an emotional thing, less of a was it a objectively perfect movie. But I don't think it's better than Into the Spider Verse. I I think it would on depending on the day you ask me could very easily be on par with it because it is just fantastic and it's not any much lower. It's still a 10 to me. But the thing with Into the Spider Verse is that it's just such a complete and emotionally resonant story. It's hard to compare that to what essentially is up until like not even this like third act of a story. Like you haven't even gotten the climax yet. So very impressive still. That's my thoughts on Spider-Man. Miles is good movie.
Nah, I'm gonna do my own thing.
So I'm recording this way too late at night because I wanted to let y'all know that I'm sorry for ghosting you like that. I've just been busy. It's not you, it's me. I had a lot of things in the bank that I didn't like, and I'm not gonna make any empty promises or apologize for my actions. But I will say that there is still the Triple R video happening, and the long-awaited Berserk video, and some other stuff. It is halfway through the year, and it is my first actual video. And you know what? That's okay, baby. We're taking it at our own pace. So I appreciate all of you being here, and I love you, and I'll see you next time.